me Sean's agenda, please? Thank you.
Like Chuck Liver over here.
Oh, yeah. How you been? Feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
Great to see you.
I'm glad it's a Gene kind of a day. I haven't had time to Gene.
That's amazing. That is amazing. She said everything with the, is now this, no, 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 no. Two things. You got three vacant properties. We want to put them together on one resolution. These. Can you, is it better? I know, I know. This is the one that concerns me.
Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Calabrese,
Present.
Councilor Fascio,
Present.
Councilman Waldron,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Sapp.
Present.
Councilman Crestis emailed a few days ago. He's actually traveling, so he can't be with us this evening.
May I get a motion for item 3, approval of the minutes?
Mayor,
Yes, Deputy Mayor Sapp.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept and approve the minutes from the February 17, 2025 meeting.
Thank you. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Fascio,
Yes.
Councilman Waldron,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sapp,
Yes.
Mayor Calabrese.
Yes.
February minutes approved.
May I get a motion for item number 4?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Waldron.
I make a motion to approve the March 2025 expenditures and reports in the amount of $2,710,309.23.
Thank you. May I get a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any public comment?
Good evening, Mayor. Greg Swatchek, 648 Gramick Lane. I see some of you are sporting green tonight, at least 3, 4, except myself included, for St. Patrick's Day. I had a question, 2 questions actually. The first one's on page 26. It's Gateway Engineers charges, February 27th, in the amount of $11,545 and $5,943.50. When I questioned some of the Gateway Engineer billings before relative to this old William Penn Highway construction, Mr. Minsterman understandably didn't have all the invoices and personnel time sheets memorized, and I appreciate that. And the manager was kind enough to follow up with detailed POs and whatnot. So with that in mind, I'd just like if Mr. Minsterman could just briefly, we've been incurring charges here for drill baby drill, and there are probably geotechnical reports associated with that. And, if any of you are interested in asking him, because he doesn't answer to me, to maybe summarize what's been done, what this is, and what the future looks like as far as this project status and expenditures go. And whether or not he specifically, I think he would know whether he charged any man-hours included in these two totals. And then the second one is on page 29, Mr. Lagrateria, the $1,000 charge on March 1st for the monthly videotaping. There's been a time where the transformer broke, and unfortunately, we didn't have recorded audio and video, or audio of the proceedings. There are other times that the microphone tends to go down and up. I don't know if it's controlled over there or controlled by him or here, or a function of the person talking. But I'd like to say that if in any time I'm speaking too loud or too soft or too close to the mic, let me know so that I can make sure that there's playback clarity to all the words I say. And I'll just leave that there, except, Mr. Lagrateria, we shouldn't have lagging in the ability to have quality work. You, Mayor, mentioned before that we're making a record, and it's important to make a record, different than when a court reporter's here. And my last comment is, when I did point this out to the manager, I think it was, I could characterize it as a sarcastic comment, in that he said, if you want an accurate recording, go hire a court reporter. It's theater here, and he gets to regulate that to, like Cecil B. DeMille, however he sees fit. So, Mayor, we can't have both. We're either trying to make an accurate record or we're not. So I hope that going forward, I won't belabor it, that we're keen to that factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Any comment from council?
Mayor, I'd just like to mention that included in the expenditure report is the year-to-date budget report that our Department of Finance has put together. And I found it to be very instructive in terms of trying to keep a sense of where we are on a monthly basis. So we eliminate surprises at the end of the year.
Any further comment from council? And I would like to thank you, Ms. Strayer, as well, and I think all of council does. It's very instructive, and certainly that's all open to the public and subject to public review. Roll call, please.
Councilman Waldron,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sapp,
Yes.
Mayor Calabrese,
Yes.
Councilor Fascio.
Yes,
Expenses and March report is accepted. Next on the agenda is the portion dedicated for non-agenda public comment for residents that signed up a week in advance to address council on a non-agenda item. When I call your name, please come to the podium and speak closely and clearly in the microphone. And if you could please say your full name and your address for the minutes that we create as our record. And the comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Greg Swachik, 648 Gramick Lane. It seems, okay, we're back on. I have a handout that is self-explanatory, if I may. Thanks for indulging, I appreciate it. This is like tough to go over in 3 minutes, so thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Great.
You're welcome.
So much for the little wooden ledge. As I said, the handout is self-explanatory. I'm limited on what I can say about it. Most of it is just old information and history and referenceable public material that I just put together for you to glean what you may. I can't really say anything more about it. I'm sort of barred from doing so, to my understanding. So what I'd like to do with the rest of the 3 minutes quickly is, Mayor, you know we had a workshop. We went over a few things, and for the public awareness, I think you evinced the willingness to consider putting a doorbell on our front door in case the door is locked, as it was numerous times, and people couldn't get in, maybe even 5 minutes after the meeting or up to a half hour. That happened to me personally a few times. So I don't know if that's a resolution or just something the manager can spend the money on to run a wire over or Wi-Fi. When it comes to time for council comments, I wish some of you, as you may see fit, direct the appropriate people to look into certain things and get back to us. The resolution Mr. Carestis, I think, had a lot to do with gives a 5-day notice for people to get prepared and follow through. I haven't seen that exercise yet, but it's just, it's just been born, so we ought to utilize it when and if we see fit. If it's possible, I'd like the minutes to be expounded on. Sometimes when I comment, it just says Greg made comments, and it wouldn't take much to put a word or two to say the subject matter or the leanings that I may be expressing relative to the subject matter. Again, just for the record, otherwise you may as well not even put anything. A lot of the other stuff I think is elaborated upon, and then it's short-suited. When somebody makes a comment, make a full, complete sentence and say who, what, where, when, why, how. It's kind of easy. So that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a public hearing that's required by Section 626 of the Cable Act. That's a law that governs and regulates cable operators in our community, and Penn Hills also receives a share of cable franchise fee renewals as part of that. And so the public hearing tonight is for any residents in Penn Hills to discuss and bring to light any information about the past performance of Verizon. And the purpose of the hearing is to identify any future cable-related needs. We're required to hold this hearing and seek public input as part of Cohen Law Group's, who we designated a few months ago to do our cable franchise renewal. So there's a list of things that you could be interested in terms of Verizon, including a state-of-the-art cable system now and the future, customer service standards if you have Verizon, also the fees that we get. There's a maximum as to what we can get, but part of what the attorney does is to make sure that we get what we're supposed to get from our fees. Also capital support for those communities that have cable access, and along with better mechanisms to enforce the franchise agreement. So those are just some ways that we can improve upon the service that Verizon provides as a cable carrier. So at this time, I'll open it up to public comment, but the purpose of this public comment is narrowly about the past performance of Verizon Cable and any future needs that you can identify for that service if you're a customer of it. If you have any of those concerns, now would be the time to lodge those. Hearing none and seeing no one availing themselves of the opportunity, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. May I get a motion for item 7A?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Fascio.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2025-7, approving a plan revision for new land development at 1105 Olympic Heights.
Thank you. May I get a second?
Second.
The motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any public comment? Any comment from council?
Mayor Calabrese.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I'd like to request that we just have some definition of what this item is for our online viewers, please.
Sure. And what I don't get right, I'm sure that our engineer will correct me or he'll fill in the blanks. But what this is something that's required by our local laws and also state environmental laws. This applicant is installing a system that isn't necessarily, it's not tied to our sewer system. It's a self-contained sewer treatment facility. What would be the proper name of it? It's a green technology. It's not a septic tank.
It's a mini on-lot treatment
A mini
system.
on-lot treatment system. So these are very expensive technologies in the first place. And so the reason that this is happening, presumably, is because in order to tie into our line, it would be quite a distance for the homeowner to run the lateral. So the homeowners installing this system on their own, they pay for all of the inspections. It's been inspected. And the DEP has already looked at it and approved it. So all we're doing is giving the final go-ahead to allow that system to be used. And I guess it's not one that's commonly seen.
Right.
Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, these are usually last resort type measures to treat residential, usually single-family home sewers, and the sewage that comes from those dwelling units. And like I said, last resort is because there really isn't sewage service from the municipality in a reasonable availability for the homeowner to utilize that service. So the DEP does allow on-lot sewage treatments in situations like that. However, in this case, those are not available based on the limitations of the property itself. So there's a process that the homeowner will go through with a certified professional to evaluate the property and see if an on-lot system would be eligible. In this case, it's not. And the connection to the public sewer system, which is Penn Hill's system, is over 1,000 feet away along your right-of-way and a particular road, which would be extremely expensive and burdensome to manage, both for Penn Hills and for the property owners. So this resolution tonight is to approve the element that is required by the municipality to review this submittal, make sure it meets all the requirements that DEP puts on the local municipality. So there's a variety of things that we have reviewed, that the homeowner has hired a professional and submitted that information. And so our recommendation is that this property owner does meet all the requirements of the elements that you're obligated to review and weigh in on. Next step here is for this, his application, if it's approved by council, would go to the DEP. He ultimately has to get approval from the DEP to install, construct, and operate this system.
Rick, in your experience, does DEP typically approve applications like this?
Normally, this is unique. There aren't a lot of circumstances like this, but normally I can't see why this wouldn't be approved by DEP, obviously not speaking for them, but there really aren't any other alternatives that are reasonable. The one alternative there is unreasonable. There really aren't any other alternatives, and in order to occupy a home, you are required to have sewage. So
Right.
this is a very significant issue for this
To your
homeowner.
knowledge, are there any other homes, places in Penn Hills that operate systems like this?
Surprisingly to me, when the Water Pollution Control Director reached out to DEP and asked that question, somehow they have a database, and maybe it was the county, They have a database that they're claiming there are 20 systems like that in Penn Hills now.
Really?
Which is a bit shocking. So
Yes.
we're gonna research that and see,
Okay.
not that it has any relevance to do with this situation, but if those system exists, who's maintaining them, where do they discharge to?
Right.
We should at least have a location of all those systems. So we're gonna work with the Water Pollution Control Department Director to figure that out, get it on the
Okay.
GIS system, and really see who's operating those. But, yeah, so surprisingly, I believe the Water Pollution Control Department Director knows of one other system that she knew of in Penn Hills.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
To our engineer, I'd just like to ask that when we get that, Scott, at you as well, when we get that information, can council and mayor please have that, please?
As far as the approval or disapproval from DEP?
No, the other locations, the other 20 locations.
Oh,
in
yes,
Penn
yes, of
Hills.
course.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Sapp,
Yes.
Mayor Calabrese,
Yes.
Councilor Fascio,
Yes,
Councilman Waldron.
Yes.
Item 7A approved.
and best of luck to, I believe it's Mr. Terrio. Is that? Hope it all goes well at DEP. Great.
And thank you so much for caring enough to actually make this improvement to keep your home in Penn Hills. And we love having you here. May I get a motion for item 7B?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilwoman Fascio.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-8, authorizing the municipality of Penn Hills to enter into a lease purchase agreement with Huntington Public Capital Corporation for a Vector ramjet truck in the amount of $336,635.
Thank you. May I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any public comment? Any comment from council?
Yeah, I have one question. The resolution states it's a lease/purchase. Which one is it, or am I misunderstanding something?
I think it's an installment sale. We own the equipment at the end of it. It's an installment sale.
Okay, thanks.
But I think it's called a lease sale, but it's an installment sale that we own the vehicle at the end. If you want more information on it, which I'm hoping you do, I know the representative from Huntington's here to share a little bit of information about it. But Sherry and I and the director, we sought competitive quotes for the financing. And the reason for the purchase is evident. Obviously, the equipment that we have, it's been repaired again. So the Vector truck is a really big part of what the line maintenance crew does. So they have to have operable equipment. And really, the reason why we wouldn't just purchase it was that we got pretty good terms on the financing. Also, it's a significant amount of money. Not that we can't pay for it all at once if we had to. It's just in looking at some other things that we might touch upon later, we're looking at really fleet management and maybe the best way to turn vehicles over. And so when we looked at our budget and we looked at everything that we have to do with the sewer fund, we determined that doing an installment purchase would be the best way to go. And we contacted FNB and, as it were, Next Tier Bank and a few other lenders. And Huntington was almost a full % lower than its competitors. So if you wanted to speak to any of it about the financing, please do.
It would be great if we had the representative spend about 2 minutes and explain to us. That would be great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening, so thank you. I see a lot of familiar faces, but for those that may not know who I am, my name is Joe Miller. Senior Vice President of Government Banking at Huntington Bank.
If you could just speak closer to it.
All right, thank you. Senior Vice President of Government Banking at Huntington Bank, and the account manager for the municipality's accounts at Huntington as well. So I work closely and frequently with Scott, with Sherry, and others in administration as well, Stephanie, Mary Beth, Jennifer, and so forth and so on. Appreciate the opportunity to provide the financing to the municipality for this Vector ramjet truck. The lease purchase structure is a common structure in municipal finance for vehicles and equipment. Reason being, that structure allows for us to set the rate as a tax-exempt rate. So you, being a municipality, have the opportunity to take advantage of issuing tax-exempt debt, tax-exempt financing, giving you a preferred rate of interest over a business, corporation, and even an individual that would finance a vehicle like this. It is structured more so like a loan because at the end of the financing, it's basically a $1 buyout, and you do become the owner of that vehicle at that particular time. It does require just a resolution for this type of financing, the lease purchase structure, as opposed to an enactment of a debt ordinance. This sort of bypasses Local Government Unit Debt Act when it comes to a formal filing with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's Department of Community and Economic Development, the DCED, like you would have to do if you were issuing general obligation debt, thereby which putting your full faith, credit, and taxing power behind it. The security interest here is not that. It is simply a lien on the vehicle itself, which is released upon payoff.
And this is a 5-year program?
Yeah, that's correct. That's how it's structured, with the first payment being in this budget year up front. So we have the ability to structure payments for you that allow for the easiest of payments for you, whether they're annual, semi-annual, monthly payments. And working with the folks here in administration, we deemed that what's in the term sheet was the most favorable for the municipality as far as cash flow and repayment structure.
Thank you.
So for our residents who may be more familiar with an individual lease by analogy, is it okay to look at it sort of in the way maybe someone is familiar with leasing a car through, I don't know, GMAC or Honda? Mm-hmm. At the end of the lease, they have the option of buying that. So instead of us buying it for fair market value, we're going to buy that vehicle for $1.
That's correct. Yeah, very good analogy. Yep, that's exactly the way to explain it.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I do have documentation that I could leave behind, both the sample resolution as well as the term sheet, unless that has already been provided.
The term sheet's with the material, Joe.
Okay.
And the only thing I would also, you didn't mention, but I'd like to point out that not all of your competitors offer the tax-free financing. We did PNC doesn't offer that too.
Yeah,
I know we had moved away from PNC, not because of that, but whatever the inside baseball is of what makes it tax-free and why they can or can't, it isn't something that they even offer, PNC. So.
Yeah, Scott, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up. As I mentioned, I work out of the government banking group at Huntington, and out of that group, we really do nothing but work with governmental entities. And because of that, we have the expertise as well as the experience of working with municipalities when it comes to the rules, regulations, and so forth. And there are a lot of other organizations, a lot of other financial institutions that do not have the expertise or that may have had it at one time and exited that business for one reason or another. Unlike us, we are very dedicated to providing banking and financing services to governmental entities like the municipality of Penn Hills. So, yeah, that's a great point, Scott.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank you,
too.
Joe. Good to see you.
Make it a motion for item 7B.
We have to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I get a second?
I second the motion, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Roll call, please.
Mayor Calabrese,
Yes.
Councilor Fascio,
Yes,
Councilman Waldron,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sapp.
Yes.
Item 7B approved.
Make it a motion for item 7C.
Mayor,
Mayor.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve item 7C, the resolution 2025-9, authorizing the municipality of Penn Hills to enter into a traffic signal maintenance agreement with PennDOT as required by the guidelines of the PennDOT's Green Light Go program.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Make it a second.
second.
Thank you, Councilor Fascio. Any public comment? Any comment from council? Roll call, please.
Mayor Calabrese,
Yes.
Councilor Fascio,
Yes,
Councilman Waldron,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sapp.
Yes.
Item 7C approved.
May I get a motion for items, we will combine this, 7D, E, and F?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Waldron.
make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-10, 2025-11, and 2025-12, approving the acquisition and subsequent disposition of vacant property at Mount Carmel Road, parcels 173-H-76 and 173-H-78, in accordance with the Allegheny County Vacant Property Recovery Program guidelines. Resolution 2025-11, approving the acquisition and subsequent disposition of vacant property at Hawk Drive, parcel 451-C-351, in accordance with the Allegheny County Vacant Property Recovery Program guidelines, and Resolution 2025-12, approving the acquisition and subsequent disposition of vacant property at Lugie Road, parcels 451-D-165 and 451-D-171, in accordance with the Allegheny County Vacant Property Recovery Program guidelines.
Thank you. May I get a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any comment from the public?
Thanks again, Mayor and Council. As far as item E goes, Hawk Drive, I'm just wondering, I walked that many times, and I'm aware of a previous subject matter, I think dealing with this parcel, where I think Deputy Mayor Sapp was a no vote on little houses there or something to that effect. And I'm just wondering, is that same parcel of land that, how does that relate to the little house thing if it's the same parcel and it's being bought by the Allegheny County Vacant Property Recovery Program? And then the next thing is for F on Logie Road. Again, I used to run my dog in woods behind there. And what I was wondering is the area of disturbance when they're actually performing this work. Is there any anticipation, or do we even know, excuse me, whether Logie Road would ever be closed for heavy equipment to be offloaded or whatever? My concern would be that now, and I guess Chief Como's still working on it, we're trying to get the nav system adjusted in Google and stuff, because any address on Horizon View Drive, a third of Westward Ho, all of Lucille and part of Dixie, if you're down at Rhode Island 22 trying to target those addresses, it'll send you through the single lane private road, Graymack Lane, that's posted no trespassing private road. So I just wanted to anticipate whether or not that would interrupt at any time the flow of Logie Road, or we're going to be sensitive to that and not have people either on their own or under the direction of the people coordinating the construction to invite people to trespass and violate the law. If we may not know that. And then the last comment I have is I noticed, and I don't know the exact time I printed an internet version, there was a G after F. And then what I picked up off the table back there when I came in tonight, there is no G. Usually, and there could be a perfect reason for that, which you may or may not disclose.
Are these questions related to these items on the agenda?
Yes.
Or is it, because it sounds like you're talking about an item that's not on the agenda at this point?
Well,
Because there is no G.
well, right, but
So
under...
it's not on the agenda.
Yes, if I could answer your question. Under item 7, you're referring to D, E, and F as a group.
Yes.
D, I had no comment. E and F, I made my comment. But since it's under item 7, and you may be jumping to 8 ordinances later, I'm just trying to point out, because I didn't hear the mayor make a motion to amend the agenda and remove item G. So if I could have clarity how the mechanics of that just happened. Thank you.
Answer. The first part of your question, and it was a very long question that I don't think I need you to repeat it for me. As it relates to item E, the property on Hawk Drive, that's for a side lot. So whenever you're seeing these applications that says that Allegheny County is going to be the owner, what's really happening when we vote on these, and we've seen these from time to time, we're basically turning the key on a process for, usually it's a neighboring property owner to get title to the property. In the case on Hawk Drive, it's someone that's acquiring it for a side lot. As for what you may be referring to in the past, it might not be related to this at all, quite honestly. So I think that's probably your best answer. If you look at the properties on Logie Road in the application, there's a side lot and a vacant structure, and it's the same kind of deal. It's the guy that lives next to it, or the guy or the gal who lives there, presumably, they're either going to use it for themselves, or maybe they're going to tear it down, maybe they're going to renovate. So it's not so much that Allegheny County is taking the properties, it's that this is the first step in the rest of the process for the Allegheny County Vacant Property Review Committee to get the items back on to an end user. That's what that is. In reference to the question about the agenda as it is, we publish our agenda a week in advance of all the meetings. And believe it or not, sometimes things change during that week. Sometimes there's items that don't need to be voted on because they were taken care of another way. Sometimes we have to add items onto the agenda. And we do that from time to time, but and again, our solicitor's here, and he would be the better answer of it, but where I think agencies have to be careful is if they add things to the agenda at the last minute, or if they add things the night of the meeting. So what you're referring to was item G. It was a thought of, there was a thought that I had that we might have to have a service agreement with a technology provider. And after looking at it and considering it, it wasn't necessary, so that's why it was removed. So it's not unusual that there's changes to the agenda after it's published in Pet Hills. It's usually not, unless there's something we have to add. And if we do have to add a thing to the agenda, usually it's well within the advertising time. It's just, I think the Sunshine Law that was recently amended, I think where you get into issues, if you're adding items to the agenda like the day before or the day of, is where there's a problem. So as far as removing items to the agenda, sometimes things are moot, or sometimes it's just a way of taking care of it there rather than have it tabled or have an item on the agenda that doesn't really need to be discussed necessarily. So that's what that is. Hopefully that answered your question. Did it? Okay. Well, I mean, the other thing too, and again, sometimes information can happen right before the meeting. We had the exact specifics of the case escaped me, but I remember a case clearly where at the night of the meeting, there was an applicant for some redress or something. He came and he requested that it would be not voted on. He requested it be removed. So we react to the situations as they occur. And so we react as things happen. So sometimes if you see something being taken off of the agenda at the last minute, it might be because sometimes that's what the applicant has asked for, or maybe there's new information that we learned. But it's always based on some information, because, right? That wasn't what I was referring to, but if you say so.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
thank you. And any further public comment? Any comment from council? I say this, I probably said it 1,000 times, but Penn Hills is the largest municipality outside of Pittsburgh, and we have close to 30 neighborhoods. We are not like, for example, Monroeville that has a business tax base. Each and every home in Penn Hills, that's what our tax base is. And so we're actually trying to put together some information. It's taking time, but we want to do it properly. When we look at this vacant property recovery program, this is helping to prevent blight, and it's helping to keep each neighborhood, it's one property at a time. So I'm very happy to make sure that I like to see that we're moving along, and I like to see that this is a program that helps neighbors who want to acquire property that maybe someone has passed away and their family has moved, and so that property is no longer there. And I think it's a good thing that we're taking care of each parcel, one parcel at a time. Roll call, please.
Councilor Fascio,
Yes.
Councilman Waldron,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sapp,
Yes.
Mayor Calabrese.
Yes.
D, E, and F are approved. Okay, next on the agenda is reserved for introduction of ordinances. And this evening, there's three that I wanted to present to the public involving parking restrictions and parking recommendations. And for those of you that don't know, in Penn Hills, we have a traffic safety committee, and they meet periodically, and they make recommendations on parking restrictions. And so recently, that is to say, since the beginning of the year, there's been three. The first being the recommendation that parking be restricted on Mill Street. And the reason for that is there's a concern about public safety, and there's a concern about fire apparatus being able to negotiate this street with on-street parking. No, that's one that we've heard before. The committee's come to council before, and they've recommended that we consider that. We talked to the neighbors there. I visited the neighborhood, and I think we did some mailings, and the neighbors really, some of the folks that live there aren't really that crazy about the idea. So like the other two, these are ones that have to be thought through by the mayor and council. There has to be some more discussion amongst our public safety and also public works as it relates to that as well. The next recommendation that came from the Traffic Safety Committee in February is to have no parking in cul-de-sacs and dead ends, basically from November until March. That's very aggressive. We're not really sure how that would work. I'm in discussion with our Public Works Director about the feasibility of it and exactly how it would work. But just like the first one, whenever the safety, we value the service of the people that are on the safety board, and we appreciate their thoughtfulness in terms of finding these situations. But at this point, they're basically getting a reading. They're being shown to council. They're not being voted on tonight. And then the most recent one that we have is a recommendation on Nalbon Avenue to make part of it one way. And there's already been a few calls that we've gotten about that from, I believe, the church up there that has some concerns how that's going to work. So those are just 3 items that the Traffic Safety Committee has given us for consideration, which may or may not resurface depending on how the mayor and council feel about them and how the neighbors feel about them and whether they're even feasible. So look for those perhaps if we find that they're warranted and if there's support to do those things.
If I could just ask, all of the requests are prefaced by the fact that the committee, Traffic Safety Committee, received a request to look into. Having done this with other situations, I think it would be helpful to know where that request, did it come from residents of those streets? Did it come, I'm not asking for the answer right now, but kind of going forward, it makes a difference if it's people who live on those streets and would be affected by these kinds of changes.
I know on the case of Mill Street, it came from the committee and some folks that are in the fire services that felt that it was too congested to take a fire truck there.
Mm-hmm.
So I know in that case it came from
And
folks
wasn't
on the
that
committee.
the street that recently had a fire?
That was College
Oh,
Avenue,
okay.
but it's down in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Scott?
Yeah.
Also, as we value our opinions and the assessments of our Traffic Safety Committee, but speaking of number C, no parking on the cul-de-sacs, I'd like to definitely have more information before any decisions are made on that, just because, I'm never in agreement
expansive.
with that. People have guests, some people have smaller driveways, and then, you have somebody, a handicapped parent coming to visit a child or, a visiting nurse, and they have to park down the road and walk, up a hill. So I would just, like to have more consideration on that. I am, definitely in agreement maybe in looking at maybe 15 to 20 feet, on each side from the beginning, just so emergency vehicles can get up there. But definitely want mayor and council to be a big part of that consideration. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on.
Yeah, sure,
Okay.
number 9.
Moving on to, next on the agenda is a monthly report that we've begun. In the time that we're here, trying to use this time as expeditiously as possible to get through some updates on some things that are happening in Penn Hills and maybe some things that may be coming or things that we're working on. So just some information to share here. My office, since the beginning of the year, we've received about 700 incoming calls. That might be surprising to some of you. That doesn't mean that I talked to 700 people, but those are all calls for service. A lot of times people call our office. Those calls have to get transferred, and we're also continuing to process right-to-know requests, although a lot of what we call information requests just kind of happen automatically from banks and different agencies. Probably the biggest ones that we get are related to sales of property. Also, last year there was a little bit of discussion when we did our budget about Act 172 benefits that accrue to volunteer firemen. Earlier in the month, the mayor and I and our staff at Penn Hills attended a meeting of all the fire chiefs up at number 7. And the meeting was twofold. Really, one was to discuss that concept in further detail, but also to take a look at our risk management programs and how we interact with our fire departments, because our fire departments are all separate entities. We give them money, but they're separate legal entities and so forth, but we cover all of the members for workers' compensation insurance. So whenever accidents happen, whenever there's any injury, we have to process that. And so a lot of it was making sure that we have the right things in place, that we're getting the right processes, that everyone's covered, that all the people and equipment are covered, and also all the equipment on the vehicles. One of the fire chiefs was just telling me how expensive one of those trucks is. I think it was number 3. It was about $700,000 for the truck that they bought most recently. And the equipment that goes on that truck, if you've ever seen one of them, that equipment's very expensive too, so we wanted to make sure that we was reviewing all that. But the main focus of the meeting was to talk about how it would work. There was a willingness, it seemed like the mayor and council, when it was first talked about, was interested in some type of a participation in Act 172. And so we're gonna have more discussions about that as we go. There's a public hearing required. But basically under Act 172, if you're an active volunteer fireman and you own property and you're paying property taxes, municipal property taxes that is, and county, because the county's doing it too, you would qualify for a refund from the municipality. Allegheny County is doing a $500 credit. We were kicking around $250 credit to the same applicants. But there's some considerations there about, well, what if you're a fireman and you don't own your home? What if your name's not on the deed? So then you wouldn't get anything presumably. Well, you can also offer it as a wage tax credit. So Sherry and I, this year, working with the mayor and council to find out the program that we want to have in Penn Hills. I think it's pretty clear that the mayor and council want to do it, but we have to find out exactly how it would work. And we have until the end of the year to do it, because under any circumstance, whether it's a real estate tax refund or whether it's a wage tax refund, it comes in the form of a credit after the taxes are paid. So the mayor and council have until basically fall to figure out how they want to handle that. So that's a big topic. There's a lot of pieces to it, and they have a lot of discretion as to the program that they want to put in place. So we'll be coming to you with more information about that. Also, we executed recently the Jamar's Place of Peace LSA grant. This is money that our representatives got for a housing development in Lincoln Park. So it's $200,000 for site prep, which has to run through the municipality. We're going to be we're going to be the grantor there. The state's the grantor, but then we're the ones that have to actually do the work. So that's moving forward. Also, just want to touch upon the fact as we build our budget on an ongoing basis, we know we're going to be paying more for electricity next year. In June, there's something called capacity. And we could spend a lot more time talking about the inside baseball of the energy markets, but in June, there's going to be a change to how electricity is provided, and it has to do with auctions, and it has to do with energy brokerage, but already we know that some of our costs are going to be going up next year on electricity, but hopefully it's not that dramatic. But then leading into finance, the finance slide, as we continue to work through 25, and we're already going to be a quarter of the way through it, which is hard to believe. We're continuing to work on developing a fund balance policy. That's something we haven't had. That's something we talked about last year, and it's something that we will have. I'm confident that we'll have one when we do, on or before we do our upcoming budget process. We're going to have a fund balance policy that works for Penn Hills, and we're working on that. Also, interestingly enough, we do take a look. We have people that monitor how things are going with borrowing and bond markets and so forth. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you follow the meetings and if you participate, you know, we're always talking about our debt position. People might have some questions about that, but we received a pretty interesting report that basically we know that it's too small to see up there, but the top part of that is the general fund debt service. I could put it on a different slide, or I could provide it, but it's also a review of all of our bonds, and I don't have that up there, but Piper Sandler, who is our investment advisor, they've basically told us that, you know, given the current market conditions right now, that doing any kind of a refunding, there wouldn't be any savings. So at least right now in the near term, the bonds that we have and the borrowing that we have, we're not looking at doing a refunding. But if it would occur and if it would be financially advantageous, then they would make that recommendation. So that's something that is being looked at, certainly with some of the uncertainty in the economy that we see. Also related to that, and it's actually tomorrow, the mayor and I are going to be meeting with a company that they manage fleet management. It's part financing vehicle, it's part management tool, but as it relates to our police cars, as it relates to our code office cars, really as it relates to anything that's not a commercial vehicle, that is to say our trucks and salt trucks, we're looking at, ways of getting into a fleet rotation program. Like right now, we're doing a lot of guesswork on, how long to keep a car. Do we buy one car every year? Do we keep this car? Do we get rid of that one? And actually now with the price of used cars continuing to go up and holding value, there might be some advantages into maybe looking at potentially how we go about replacing our fleet, especially the police department. So we may be coming back with more information about that. Not sure if there's a savings, but there may be. It might be worthwhile to take a look at. So that's something that's happening. In the police department here, you could see some of the call volume that we had in February. They had 1,400 calls in February in the police department, the majority of which come almost even between daylight and afternoon, not as many over midnight. So, and that's consistent. If you were here last month, the totals for January weren't that different. Also, the ambulance LSA grant, that was the efforts of our legislator to get us that award for an ambulance. That contract's been executed now, so Diane can place the order. That's basically what it means. Once your contracts for the funding is executed, typically that means you can start spending money. Usually that's what it means. But that's not always the case, but in this case, that's what it is. So that's completed, and I think there's a pretty long wait list. I haven't talked to her in a while, but I think she's expecting a wait on that. And she herself, her department of EMS, they responded to 800 calls in February, and they referred 227 calls to our neighbors, of which we have many. And I have it somewhere here, but that 227 calls to mutual aid, it's not just to one place. Obviously, they have their challenges as well, especially as it relates to staffing and recruitment. That's an ongoing topic in public safety that we continue to have. And along with that is this effort to institute 12-hour scheduling in our police department, which is really coming upon us at the end of the month. We're confident about it. We think we've done enough homework. I think we've spent a lot of time and thought on it. We've had a lot of meetings. There was a lot of different versions of what it would look like, and I could tell you that it wasn't a situation where everyone got everything that they want. It wasn't a situation where the police department makes their own schedule. It's a schedule that we think will work for Penn Hills, and we're confident that when we enter into it, that it's going to work for the officers, and it's going to be better for their quality of life, and we think it's going to make sense for us too. We think it's going to be responsible financially for us. Having said that, we have our challenges. We have a lot of non-life-threatening injuries right now. We have a lot of people off right now, as it were, right, Chief? There's quite a bit. So, we're sort of starting behind the 8 ball in a sense, but we're going to make it work. We don't want to hop in and out of schedules, right? If you jump into something and then jump out of it, it might indicate you didn't spend enough time really thinking about it, or maybe you didn't consider all the what ifs. And it's probably costing money if you're jumping in and out of anything, really. So I'm confident that all the pieces are in place, and that we have the ability to make it work. We're going to be coming to you, I'm sure, after a month or two, hopefully with good news, right? I'm hoping that it works. So we'll be having more on that. in the exciting world of DPW and wastewater treatment, again, some of the things we know well about recruitment and staffing, that's a topic that we've spent a lot of time internally looking at options, and we're going to continue to look for them. And there's some creative solutions that we're finding, but really it's the idea that these are good opportunities for people that want them. We struggle, especially at our sewer department, of finding people to come in as laborers and then to not only do their job, but also to stay there and to work long enough to get the certified operator's license. And that's been a challenge to keep people because, we're competing with everyone else. But I'm convinced that there's things that we're going to be able to do, hopefully this year, that's going to turn that around so that we get the people that we need. The small sewer and water grant is coming up. I know the director and I have talked about that. That's a grant that Gateway and the department and Gateway historically work on. There's a 15% match with it, and I think we're going to be applying for concrete repairs, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what she told me. I asked her is that what we're doing?
Yes.
And it's up to $500,000. So it's construction. Okay,
Yeah.
So that's expensive work. We already did some concrete work last year somewhere else, and it's not cheap, and there's not a lot of people that do that kind of work either, is I think what we found out. So stay tuned on that. Our parks are opening on the 14th. So right now our department is getting ready for all of that and what it involves, along with the fact that the asphalt plant, well, at least there's one asphalt plant, I should say, that's open in Zelian-Opal. But the asphalt plants are opened, so we're beginning hot patch 2. Obviously, there's a lot of need there as well. So they're shifting gears, right? I think it was at the last meeting we were talking about running out of salt. So they have to constantly shift gears to what's happening. On the planning and code office side of things, our multimodal application for the next round is in. That's under evaluation. That's money that either comes from Penn or CFA, depending. A lot of paving money. I should say all of it, almost all of the paving and street reconstruction that has happened in Penn Hills the last couple of years is, you might as well say, was 80% funded by the state, right? 20% by us. And that's been our street improvement program. We were very fortunate to do that. So we're hoping to get some more money and continue that. Obviously, we know the need is always there. It's always going to be greater than the funding. We're onboarding new code officers. If you come into the building, you may see it's not unusual to have new people, but it's unusual to have so many new people all at one time. And so we're introducing new people in our planning office and our code office. Probably that'll be joining us at future meetings or future presentations as time and interest allow. So right now, that's what's happening in the code office, along with the development of a body cam policy for code officers. We want to begin the same practice that Penn Hills was a leader. I think Penn Hills was one of the first departments. I think we're proud to say we was one of the first departments to ever have body cams as a police department. I think they're pretty much ubiquitous now, but I'm pretty sure that we were one of the first to do that. And so it makes a lot of sense. It's safe for the officer. It provides a record in case there's a complaint about the officer and so forth. So the policy's already been developed. It looks a lot like the police departments. And so that'll be coming forward for a vote too. Also this week, we have an important hearing on our Community Development Block Grant Program and how we spend our allocation. So if you're interested in that, you come to the hearing on the 20th. It's at 7 o'clock. And that's really forms that meeting and that hearing really forms the basis for how that money is going to be spent. And our friends at Gateway every month produce, this on the right is just a sampling of some of the programs at the state that are either due or coming due. A lot of them are the same funding source. You'll see like a lot of them are the C2P2 program, but there's different categories inside of it. So we're always trying to take care and look at those opportunities when we can. If we have the need and if we're going to have a competitive application. Information technology, I had mentioned that we was working on the MFA, and for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a means by which to further identify someone in order to log on to systems. We just got these tokens. They're actually called tokens. It's a physical, looks like a keychain, like a fob type thing. So that's where we're at. So that's happening. Also, we had a meeting with Councilman Waldron about the website and some improvements that we may want to consider in the way that it looks and in some of the user features. So that's something that's happening too. I wanted to also mention about some things at the library, and I think these are online. If they're not, we'll make sure they're there. The library recently produced 2 documents. One is a state of the library plan, and the second is a library strategic plan. So both of those are going to be available online to you. It talks a lot about some of their bigger ideas of what they want to do, which ties to a grant that they're working on, which is the Keystone Grant. It's due in October, and at this point, we're at the selection process of, in order to apply for the money, you first have to select an engineer architect. And so there's 10 proposals that we're evaluating along with the library board, and then they'll come to the mayor and council also to evaluate. And last but not least, something I did just want to briefly touch on, because it is a funding item. We're a member of the Council of Governments for our region, and we give them funding every year. Recently, they approached my office and said that they want us to review how we fund their agency, and it's because of the fact that under the regional asset district in Allegheny County, in Allegheny County, everybody pays a little more for sales tax, as it were. I think it's an additional 1%. Well, that 1% of money goes to something called the regional asset district, and then that regional asset district divides that money amongst the communities. And one of the places that get a lot of the RAD money is our library. So RAD funds our library services. And in talking with the COG, there's going to have to be some future discussion on it, because they're suggesting that over the years we may have underfunded them by a bit. And so our solicitor and I are looking at the law and what's going to be required there. But when we do our 26 budget, we might end up having to pay more for our membership to the Council of Governments, depending on what we find and really depending on what's appropriate. Obviously, we're going to follow the law and pay what we have to pay, but that's just something that might be coming along. So there's no surprises on that. Also, did I skip anything? I think that's about what I had for now since our last meeting. Also, I attended the Pennsylvania Employer Labor Relations Advisory Service 45th annual conference up in Hershey. That pertains to exciting things like labor laws and Loudermill hearings. So that's what I have for you. Okay. If you have any questions about this or anything else, let me know.
Thank you so much. Deputy Mayor, do you have any comments?
I was so indulged in that report.
Do you want us to come back to you?
I wasn't ready. No, I'm just going to go ahead and say thank you to everyone who came out this evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. Councilwoman. Would you like to make a public comment? No, it's a comment. Yes, you're welcome to make if you'd like to make a public comment, you're welcome to make a comment.
Come to the microphone.
Please come to the microphone and make your comment. That'll be fine.
Thank you, Mayor. Consistent with the resolution of Mr. Carestas, thank you for letting me, according to the verbiage in the resolution, pose a question to the manager after the report. That's specifically what the language says. It has to be relevant to what he said, not a stretch. I have a direct correlation. It's a simple question.
Yes, feel free. You
Thank
have
you.
a microphone. Feel
Thank
free.
you. Relative to the amount of police calls, I'd just like to make a sidebar comment before the question. I had no idea we had that many calls. I need to commend the police force for taking care of business for that many things in Penn Hills. I've lived here my whole life. Had no idea that that's how much activity was afoot. That being said, in the spirit of decreasing their workload, I'd like to ask the manager, again, like I did in Giant Eagle once, and I apologize for that. I know it irritated you.
There's no apology
Whether or
needed.
not
Just get
whether or not you yet wrote a letter to either Google and or the 3 or 4 nav companies that create software that send innocent people up a private road when it's posted not to. They have a bird on each shoulder, one saying go in, the sign says no, the police chief says they don't know any better. I'd like to remove that ambiguity from them. If my brother said it's a few lines of code, and maybe Councilor Waldron could comment, he puts things in bins. I love that analogy. When I'm asking him whether or not he realizes and took action on asking Google to change the software so that you only use GRAMAC as a link if that's the target destination. If it's not, recalculate, removing it from the database for consideration to get from point A to B. Was that letter written by the manager or the police chief to minimize the amount of calls? I reported 24 license plates. That's 24 calls that they didn't need to have. That would get rid of 3/4 at least, and any more that's coming down the future. It's a gunshot approach to minimize their activity. They're busy enough. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Mr. Andrzejczyk, yes or no? Have you written a letter to Google?
I know that the police department did contact Google.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you for your question. Councilor Fascio, do you have any comments?
No.
Thank you.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Councilman Waldron,
No comments tonight, thank you.
thank you so much. I just want to echo the thanks that the deputy mayor has mentioned, and I want to tell the manager, I don't know if I like these reports because you steal our thunder. We don't get to tell anybody anything that we've done because you tell them everything. But I would like to say one thing, though. You know, we're pretty much in the business of roads, sewers, and public safety. But I did have the pleasure of attending, I'm sorry, I want to make sure that I get this correct. We had a number of our 6th and 7th graders who participated in the Penn Hills Volunteer Firemen's Association 2024 Annual Fire Prevention Essay Contest. It was really beautiful to see the kids come out with their parents and to be celebrated, and we had they each received their certificates, and our first place winners moved on to a higher level. But you know, when we talk about fire safety and we're used to, or public safety, we typically are talking about it at the adult level. But one of the, in my mayor's message, you know, we did give congratulations, but we also said that fire prevention saves lives. And it's great to start with the children. And so congratulations again to them and to their families and for letting them come out. And thank you all for coming out this evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and this meeting is adjourned.
I like how they changed our exit signs to green for St. Patrick's Day.